Howdy doody buckaroonies, and welcome back to another episode of Morning Coffee with Cameron. Today, I wanted to experiment with a little bit of a short form video. I've been wanting to try some shorter form content for a while now, so if you do enjoy this, please let me know by leaving a like or a comment down below, and I'd be happy to continue with it. While longer format content is certainly fun, I feel like the broader point of this channel is to simply give you an idea that you can run off and create with, and I feel like some shorter form content would just be a bit more conducive to that. I've been in a just terrible mood today, and I don't know why. I'm so just upset and sad feeling. So I went out and bought myself a couple of string libraries, and I figured what better day than today to talk about a couple of cool tricks for making super epic cinematic chords. So let's do it. Okay, so welcome to the theory zone. Now I know the theory zone is scary, but it's all right. I got you. I will be your guide. We're going to be talking about doing cool stuff like that. And we're going to work sort of in baby steps. We're going to talk about something a bit more basic, something a bit more spicy, and then something that's slightly more advanced. I'm going to try and avoid explaining a bunch of music theory stuff here, because while theory is important, I think it's not all that helpful sometimes. You just really got to kind of feel things out in your gut and just practice and experiment with ideas. Music theory, ultimately to me, is kind of just this set of loose-ish rules, because every time there's a rule, there's like a million reasons why that rule doesn't work in this specific case, so it just gets too muddy and murky, and I don't want to deal with it. In this video, I'm going to try and avoid throwing a bunch of theory at you, but if you do want to learn about music theory and stuff, I highly recommend Hook Theory. It's one of my favorite resources for this stuff, and you should totally go check it out. There's a bunch of really great free stuff, but there's some paid resources as well that are excellent, specifically the books, so I do recommend you check those out if you want to sort of dive into this stuff and get a better understanding of it. Okay, cool cinematic trick number one is going to be chromatic mediants. And I know that sounds really scary, but it's super, super simple. Let's talk about the key of C major, all the white notes from C to C. So we've got some stuff going on, and that's all well and good. We could certainly write a effective piece of music from this. But that maybe sounds a bit trite and just kind of stupid. In a scale, we have a set of intervals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in most scales. There's some differences, but again, this is the comfortable theory zone with nice padded walls and whatnot, so we're not going to get into weird stuff. But what you need to understand are the mediants. Those are degrees 3 and 6 of the scale. So in the key of C, we have 1, C, 2, D, 3, E, 4, F, 5, G, 6A, and 7B. From this, we can build chords by just skipping a note. Hooray! Now, what is a chromatic mediant? Let's first define the mediant, okay? We've got C. That's home base, that's our 1. Our mediant, or 3, would be E minor. Our submediant, or 6, would be A minor. So we've got C to E minor, and then C to A minor. Okay, chromatic mediants mean we're going to borrow a note that is chromatic or outside the scale and use that for our mediant. So in the case of C major, instead of going up to an E minor, we could go from a C major to an E major. Or we could go from a C major to an E flat major, which sounds pretty cool. Now on the submediant side, we could go from a C major and take that to an A major. That feels pretty epic. Or we could do C major, go to A flat major. Feels pretty cool. And the other idea would be going from C major to something like E flat minor, The final combination would be going from C major to A flat minor. And that feels pretty spooky. So if we try this out in context, it sounds incredibly cool without being super complicated. Another basic thing to keep in mind when creating cool cinematic chord things is your chord voicing. This is super important because it really changes the flavor and tone of things. So if we have C major to E flat major, that sounds cool, but it's maybe a little primary. Because we're doing just a simple triad and then root and fifth on the bottom. So we could take this voicing and change it a little bit. So E flat major, we got E flat, G, and B flat. So let's take that and look at our C chord. So we got C, E, and G, and we know our E flat major is gonna have E flat and B flat. So instead of moving like this, where you can see I kind of gotta pick up my whole hand to do that, I could do this instead. That ultimately provides a very different feel to this chord. And we could even do something a bit more spicy by voicing it over a different note. So we could go to an E flat major over G flat. And that's getting really chromatic and weird because then we're bringing in both chromatic mediants at the same time, and it creates this lush, just beautiful texture because we're kind of getting both chromatic mediants, but the second chromatic mediant is actually a fourth. So this creates what would be just a nice sus4 chord. So putting that all together. Next one. Wow. The next trick for cool cinematic voicings would be polychords, which we're not going to totally get into here, but what you need to try is just putting chords over other chords. So sticking, for the sake of safety, to C major. Cool. Let's take our C major or our 1, and let's put G major over the top. Let's try a C with an A on top. A C with an F. Or we could move up to D and put the A over that. So this is a pretty fun tool, and the easiest way to come up with a good combination of chords to pair together is use a chord that uses a similar note. So here, once again, C, E, and G make C major. So we could probably put the E minor over the C because we have C and E, which creates C major. We've got our G down here. We've got our E down here. And we'll start bringing in the minor chords. So E and G. And then we're going to put the B on top. So we've got two different chords. But put them together, and we get a cool 7th chord. Now, another way to look at this that is a sort of more abstract thing is to use a chord that's neighboring. It's like a note away. So if we look at C, E, and G, we've got F. So F is going to have FAC. And that's because my F is right here. And then we could do C and A, because A is just one more up here. This is a really cool thing to try and combine because it gives you some pretty epic voicings without a lot of effort. So sticking in C. Pretty neat stuff. Okay, that brings us to the final boss, which is borrowing notes and using parallel keys and stuff, which gets, again, pretty murky, so we're not gonna dive into a bunch of details, but that's really the example I was using at the beginning here. So this is pretty complicated stuff, but I want to show you my kind of hack to this. As much as I hate to call it a hack, it's pretty cool and pretty easy. In this example that I just wanted to play, we're working mostly out of D major. But we're gonna borrow some notes that are outside of it. So first up, that movement. How does that work and why? What I'm doing is simply looking at where my fingers are. So to be super clear on camera, I've got D, got a D major. Now, if I look at where my fingers are, the question is, how can I move as little as possible and change to a new chord? So in this case, a good example would be taking this and maybe just moving this fifth up a half step. And then we've got this, which is sort of ugly. So let's take this and move it up a half step. And now we've got a pretty beautiful voicing. So again, now, we're here. Where can I go from here? Maybe I could take this and move it a whole step down. So now we've got, but that's getting a bit ugly because now we've got a pretty yucky triad going on up there. So what we could do instead is ditch this A. That leaves us with this. Still kind of yucky, so let's drop this D down to a C. And just to make this voicing a bit more friendly, let's drop this root and take it down. Maybe we could bring, oh, I don't know, a new fourth in there. So we're just watching where our hands are and what we could do from here. So here, maybe we could move to, I guess, a B flat. And let's drop this to a C. Maybe drop this down again. So I've got a G in the bass. Let's go to a B. Let's drop this now to create an F major. So I've got a G5 and a B flat major. So we could take this to an F major by just dropping a couple notes. So I'm gonna drop this down a whole step, so we've got F and C. And I'm gonna drop this B down a whole step, or a half step rather. So I've got this G going down a whole step. Drop the B flat. And we've successfully moved things around. So I guess that whole example, if I can remember it in real time, and what I'm doing here, again, is not thinking about theory. It gets too murky, it gets too messy, and it's just hard to understand, especially if I'm trying to do it all in real time. What I'm instead focusing on is simply the ergonomics of moving. Where can I move as little as possible to get to something new? I don't care that I'm leaving the key and transitioning to something totally different. It doesn't matter. It just sounds really good. And I think that's the idea I want to encourage you to explore, is take some ideas, you know, these chromatic medians and stuff, these polychords, these kind of descending links and connecting the dots, and throw them together in a melting pot with whatever you're doing. If it's metal, if it's orchestral, if it's electronic music, if it's house music, all this stuff can be applied anywhere, and it's super simple and it's a lot of fun. I know the last example gets sort of complicated. That takes a good amount of practice, but it's super, super cool and makes things really epic without a whole lot of effort on your part. And that's it. I know this wasn't really super short form, and I know this was kind of like 3 different tutorials in one, but I figured it was worth doing it this way because at least one of these ideas should make sense to you, and then you can go out and play with it and make something, and then come back to explore the other ideas later on. If you end up making something using these tips, feel free to send it to me. I always really do love checking out the music you guys make, and it's really inspiring to me to hear that the channel has helped you to create something, because that's what I want to do, is just inspire you to go do something. And maybe, just maybe, one of those tracks will get me out of this super shitty mood I'm in today. In the meantime, though, I suppose I'll sit here and make some swoopy string things, but before that, I'm going to go downstairs and drown my sorrows in a big old box of spicy chicken nuggets. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.